It began like any ordinary day in a small, close-knit community where everyone seemed to know each other. The streets were quiet, families moved about their routines, and nothing appeared unusual. Yet hidden in those calm hours, a nightmare was about to unfold. A young girl full of life and innocence vanished without a trace. What started as a search for a missing child soon transformed into one of the most horrifying cases the detectives had ever faced. This was not just a disappearance. It was the unraveling of a story so dark and disturbing that even seasoned investigators were left shaken to their core. The girl was known to be bright, kind, and well-loved. Teachers praised her in school, neighbors admired her energy, and her family adored her. Her disappearance made no sense. She was not the kind of child to wander off or vanish suddenly. When her family realized she was missing, panic struck almost immediately. The house was searched, the backyard combed over, and neighbors called out her name through the streets. But there was no sign of her. Within hours, police were notified, and the case began to escalate quickly. The initial search was extensive. Officers spread through the neighborhood, checking every corner, every alley, and every park bench where a child might be found. Dogs were brought in to track her scent, volunteers lined the streets with flashlights, and helicopters scanned the area from above. Yet despite these efforts, the girl remained missing. There were no footprints, no dropped belongings, and no witnesses who could say they saw where she went. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Detectives began questioning the family. This is always a difficult step in such cases, because although families are most often victims of grief, investigators know that sometimes answers lie closest to home. The parents were devastated, pleading for help and insisting they had no idea what had happened. Their emotional state seemed genuine, but detectives knew better than to rule anything out. The timeline of events leading to the disappearance became the focus. When had anyone last seen the girl, and what could have happened in those critical moments before she was noticed missing? Here is where the case took an even darker turn. Surveillance footage from a nearby street showed a figure walking with what appeared to be a child. The grainy video made it hard to identify either face, but the height and build matched the missing girl. The figure leading her, however, was not immediately recognizable. Detectives froze the video and studied it carefully. This was the first solid lead. But who was this person, and where had they taken her? The investigation grew more intense. Detectives canvassed the area, showing the video to residents and asking if they recognized the mysterious figure. Several people suggested that the person resembled a man who lived only a few blocks away, someone known for being quiet and keeping to himself. He had no close friends in the community and rarely interacted with neighbors. While nothing about him seemed overtly suspicious at first, detectives began to feel uneasy as they learned more about his past. Records revealed troubling behavior, past accusations that never resulted in charges, and a pattern of isolation that raised red flags. Pause for a moment and imagine being one of the detectives at this stage. You are holding on to hope that the girl might still be alive, but the clock is ticking, and the evidence is pointing towards someone who may be capable of the unthinkable. Every decision you make could determine whether she is found safe or lost forever. The weight of that responsibility is crushing. Armed with this information, detectives obtained a warrant to search the man's home. What they found inside sent chills through the entire investigative team. The house was cluttered and unkempt, but hidden among the mess were items that seemed disturbingly out of place. Pieces of children's clothing that did not belong to anyone in the man's household, photographs that raised serious concerns, and traces of evidence that suggested the girl had indeed been there. Forensic teams moved carefully, collecting everything that could possibly connect the suspect to the disappearance. It was becoming clear that this was no longer just a missing persons case. Something far more sinister was unfolding. The suspect was brought in for questioning. At first, he denied everything, claiming he had nothing to do with the girl's disappearance. But detectives pressed harder, showing him fragments of the evidence, reminding him of the timeline, and presenting witnesses who had seen him near the scene. Slowly, cracks began to appear in his story. He stumbled over his words, contradicted himself, and failed to provide a solid alibi. What horrified the detectives most was not just his evasiveness, but the coldness with which he spoke. There was no urgency, no remorse, only a chilling detachment that made everyone in the room uneasy. As the investigation deepened, forensic results confirmed the worst fears. Biological traces found in the suspect's home matched the missing girl. There was no longer any doubt that she had been there. But where was she now? The community held on to hope, praying that she was alive, waiting to be found. Detectives worked tirelessly, retracing every movement the suspect had made in the days leading up to the disappearance. Hours of surveillance footage, phone records, and even receipts were examined with painstaking detail. Then came the breakthrough. A set of tire tracks found near a remote wooded area matched the tires on the suspect's vehicle. Investigators followed the lead, venturing deep into the forest with search teams. The atmosphere was heavy with dread. Every step felt like it carried the weight of impending tragedy. And then, in a clearing, the search came to an end. The remains of the missing girl were found. The discovery was devastating. The hope of finding her alive was shattered, replaced by grief that swept through the entire community. Detectives, hardened by years of difficult cases, were left horrified by what they saw. The trial that followed painted a disturbing picture of the suspect. Prosecutors laid out the evidence piece by piece, showing the deliberate actions he had taken to lure the girl, deceive those around him, and attempt to cover his tracks. The defense struggled to counter the overwhelming evidence, but nothing could erase the horror of what had happened. The jury listened in silence, visibly shaken by the details. When the verdict was finally delivered, the suspect was found guilty on all counts. The sentence was severe, ensuring that he would never again walk free. For the family, justice brought little comfort. Their daughter was gone, her life stolen in an act of cruelty that defied comprehension. Friends and neighbors gathered to honor her memory, remembering the joy she brought into their lives and mourning the future she would never have. Detectives, though proud that they had solved the case, admitted that it was one of the most haunting of their careers. The image of the small girl, full of life, contrasted so painfully with the reality of her end. It was a case that would stay with them forever. This disappearance and the horrifying truth that followed left scars on everyone it touched. The community became more cautious, families grew more protective, and parents struggled with the fear of letting their children out of sight. It also raised difficult questions about how someone with such a troubling past could have gone unnoticed for so long. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Could warning signs have been acted upon earlier? These questions continue to linger, casting a shadow over the pursuit of justice. Yet in the aftermath, there was also resilience. The family, though devastated, chose to honor their daughter's memory by creating foundations and support networks to help other families of missing children. Detectives used the lessons from the case to refine investigative methods, ensuring that future disappearances could be addressed even more swiftly. Out of horror came determination, and out of loss came the will to protect others from the same fate. The disappearance of a girl that left detectives horrified is not just a crime story. It is a reminder of the fragility of innocence, the darkness that can exist within people, and the tireless fight of those who refuse to give up until the truth is revealed. It teaches us to remain vigilant, to cherish those we love, and to never underestimate the power of determination when facing evil.